It's 1967. The Vietnam War rumbles in the headlines. Gas is 33 cents a gallon, and American highways are being conquered by the biggest, baddest muscle cars ever built. Into this high-octane storm came something different. A Mustang so wild that even Ford executives raised eyebrows. The Shelby GT500. It wasn't just a fast car. It was a cobra wrapped in fiberglass, a predator disguised as a pony. But here's the kicker. Beneath the stripes and scoops, the '67 GT500 is full of weird quirks, half-hidden secrets, and stories that sound too crazy to be true. From fiberglass hoods that warped in the sun, to police fleet Shelbys chasing down moonshiners, this car has it all. And wait until you hear why number one almost never made it to production. The 1967 Shelby GT500 isn't just another chapter in Mustang history. It's the car that turned the pony car into a full-blown muscle legend. With its big block 428 engine, menacing design, and Carroll Shelby's fingerprints all over it, the GT500 became a symbol of horsepower excess. But it also became a canvas for unusual decisions, improvised fixes, and myths that still swirl today. That's what makes it fascinating. So let's dive into 20 weird facts you didn't know about the 1967 GT500 Mustang. And hey, don't forget to hit subscribe if you love horsepower history. The hood wasn't steel, it was fiberglass. From the street, the '67 Shelby GT500 looked like a heavyweight boxer, thick, muscular, ready to throw a punch. So you'd expect its massive hood to be stamped steel, right? Here's the twist. The hood was made entirely of fiberglass. Shelby's team wanted a lighter piece that could easily accommodate the twin forward-facing scoops. Fiberglass gave them flexibility and reduced weight by nearly 40 pounds compared to steel. But there was a catch. Fiberglass didn't hold up well in daily driving. Owners complained that heat from the big block warped the panels, making gaps uneven. Slam it shut too hard, and cracks spidered across the surface. Dealers sometimes replaced them with steel service parts, which is why surviving original hoods are incredibly rare today. Collectors look for rough, hand-laid fiberglass texture on the underside. That's the tell. Even more interesting, Shelby didn't stop at the hood. The front fenders and trunk lid also featured fiberglass sections, saving weight at the expense of durability. It was a hot rodder's shortcut that made sense in 1967, but became a nightmare for long-term owners. Spotting a GT500 with its original hood is like finding a coin with a minting error, an expensive oddity that makes purists swoon. And if that feels unusual, wait until you see how Shelby improvised with the taillights in number 19. Early cars wore Cougar taillights. The part nobody tells you about the GT500's rear end? It wasn't originally designed for the Mustang at all. Early production 1967, GT550s left the Shelby facility wearing taillights lifted, straight from the Mercury Cougar. Why? Shelby American was scrambling to meet deadlines. The Mustang's stock taillight setup didn't fit the elongated fiberglass rear panel Shelby had designed, so the team raided Ford's parts bin. The Cougar's wide horizontal taillights slid right in and gave the GT500 a flat, upscale look. But here's the kicker. Records suggest that a few even wore Thunderbird lenses briefly, making the rear identity even more confusing. Shelby himself was notorious for improvisation, and this was a textbook case. The result? A rear end that looked more luxury than muscle, almost like a European GT car. Collectors today hunt down these Cougar-light Shelbys like treasure. Out of roughly 2,048 GT500s produced in '67, only a fraction carried them before Mustang-sourced units became standard. Auction premiums for documented examples can climb 6 figures higher, especially if the original rear panel survives. The easiest spotter's tip? Look for the 3-lens horizontal bar setup and wider bezels compared to stock Mustangs. It's a Shelby quirk that turned a pony car into something resembling a Lincoln Mercury experiment. And if you thought taillight swaps were strange, number 18 proves that Shelby even offered a no-stripe version. The delete stripe mystery. Every image you've seen of a 1967 GT500 probably has bold Le Mans stripes running the length of the car. But here's the twist. Some cars rolled off the line with no stripes at all. This wasn't a flashy marketing stunt. It was the quiet, rarely acknowledged stripe delete option. Official Ford order sheets didn't list it, but insiders say Shelby dealers offered the choice to buyers who wanted muscle without the boy racer vibe. Executives who wanted discretion, insurance-conscious customers, or buyers in conservative towns could quietly tick the box. Their cars emerged from the Shelby facility in plain factory paint, no racing stripes across the hood or roof. Collectors today treat original stripe delete GT500s as some of the rarest. The tricky part is proving authenticity. Many owners later added stripes, while some cars had them removed in restorations. The only way to be sure? Check for factory paint under the trim and see if there's any evidence of tape marks. If not, you might have a genuine sleeper Shelby. The debate still rages. Was it an official program or just a dealer favor? Either way, the existence of stripe delete cars proves that even Shelby recognized not every buyer wanted to scream horsepower. And if you think that's understated, just wait, because number 17 shows how some GT500s went the opposite direction and became full-blown police interceptors. Some GT500s were used by law enforcement. It sounds like a muscle car legend, too good to be true. GT500 Mustangs prowling America's highways with flashing lights on the roof. But reports and period photos confirm that at least a handful of 1967 Shelby GT500s were used by law enforcement. Why? High-speed pursuit. During the late 60s, sheriffs in rural counties often bought muscle cars to chase down moonshiners, smugglers, or just cocky young drag racers. While Dodge Chargers and Plymouth Furies were common, some departments looked at Shelby's new GT500 as the ultimate pursuit machine. The big block 428 engine, capable of 0 to 60 in the mid 6-second range, gave them an edge against nearly anything on the road. Rumors point to a county in Texas that ordered 2 GT500s, one in night mist blue and another in Wimbledon white. Outfitted with police radios, spotlights, and minimal striping, they became local legends. Unfortunately, documentation is scarce. Many police departments didn't keep detailed fleet records. What survives are anecdotes from retired officers and a few faded snapshots. For collectors, the mere possibility of a genuine police package, GT500, is tantalizing. If one ever surfaces with ironclad proof, it could fetch record-breaking auction money. Imagine it. A Shelby built for high-speed chases, turning America's back roads into drag strips with badges. And if that sounds wild, number 16 explains how Shelby managed to outsmart not police, but the insurance companies themselves. Rated at 355 horsepower, but really closer to 400. When you opened the sales brochure in 1967, the GT500's mighty 428 cubic inch V8 was listed at 355 horsepower. Respectable, sure. But here's the kicker. It was a deliberate understatement. Period dyno tests and driver reports consistently showed real output closer to 400 horsepower, sometimes more. Why the lie? Insurance. By 1967, companies had started penalizing any car advertised with 400-plus horsepower. Premiums skyrocketed, and young buyers, the very audience for a Shelby, couldn't afford coverage. So Ford and Shelby played the numbers game. They published a lower rating to dodge red flags, while buyers got more grunt than advertised. The engine itself was no slouch. Borrowed from Ford's Police Interceptor lineup, it carried dual 600 CFM Holley carburetors, an aluminum intake manifold, and enough torque to shred tires at half throttle. Quarter-mile times dipped into the high 13s, plenty for its day. Collectors today love reminding skeptics that the GT500 was the most underrated car of '67. The proof is under the hood. Those twin Holleys and factory intake setup are dead giveaways that the brochure figures were fantasy. Want a spotter's tip? Look for original aluminum manifolds stamped with Ford's engineering codes. Clones often get this wrong. This wasn't the only time Shelby bent the truth, but it was the most lucrative. Buyers got secret horsepower at a discount. And speaking of secrets, number 15 involves a Hollywood tie-in that could have changed the GT500's entire public image. Steve McQueen almost endorsed the GT500. Here's the part that nearly rewrote Mustang history. Hollywood's king of cool, Steve McQueen, was reportedly in talks to front a marketing campaign for the 1967 Shelby GT500. At the time, McQueen was fresh off the Cincinnati Kid and gearing up for Bullitt, 1968, where a Highland Green Mustang GT would cement his legend. But before Bullitt, Ford's ad team allegedly floated McQueen as a spokesperson for the GT500. Why McQueen? Because he embodied the Shelby ethos: fast, stylish, rebellious. Rumor has it that promotional sketches and campaign drafts paired McQueen's rugged face with slogans like the GT500 for the man who knows no limits. But there was a twist. Ford pulled back, worried about costs and whether tying Shelby's image too closely to one actor might backfire. Instead, they leaned on racing credibility and Shelby's name itself. Collectors love this what if. Imagine if McQueen had driven a GT500 on screen instead of the Bullitt Mustang GT. Auction values might be double what they are today. Spotter's angle. A handful of promotional brochures featured subtle Hollywood-style photo shoots, hinting at what could have been. It remains one of the great almost stories of muscle car marketing. And speaking of surprises, number 14 shows how even the wheels on GT500s weren't always what they seemed. The aluminum wheel disaster. Every Shelby needs the right shoes, and for the GT500, that meant special aluminum wheels. Lightweight, stylish, and way ahead of their time, these wheels were supposed to give the GT500 both looks and performance. But here's the kicker. They were so poorly made that Shelby recalled them almost immediately. The wheels, produced by Kelsey Hayes, had a structural flaw. Under aggressive driving, stress cracks formed around the hubs. On a 400-horsepower car with teenage owners dropping the clutch at stoplights, that was a recipe for disaster. Stories spread of wheels shattering mid-drive, sending cars skidding off course. Shelby reacted quickly, recalling the entire batch and replacing them with safer steel wheels. Because of this, very few GT500s survived with their original aluminum wheels intact. Today, finding a set is like hunting unicorns. They're prized by collectors for rarity, but ironically, most owners won't actually drive on them. They're too dangerous. Instead, they live on display stands, conversation pieces more than functional parts. Spotter's tip. Real wheels have casting numbers and machining marks unique to the 1967 batch. Reproductions often look too perfect. And if you think wheels that could shatter is weird, Number 13 proves Shelby sometimes put more emphasis on style than actual function, especially with those wild hood scoops. Hood scoops that didn't work. When you first see a 1967 GT500, the hood is impossible to ignore. Two massive forward-facing scoops stare you down like nostrils on a bull. They look aggressive, they scream performance, and they became the car's signature look. But here's the twist. Those scoops weren't functional. They were fake. Shelby's engineers initially planned for ram air induction, where the scoops would feed cool, dense air directly into the carburetors. But deadlines and costs killed the idea before it was finished. Instead, the scoops were bolted on as cosmetic accents. Air didn't flow through them to the engine. It simply slammed into a block-off plate. For buyers, this was both hilarious and frustrating. You had one of the most menacing hoods in the industry, yet it functioned more like costume jewelry. Some owners even cut out the block-off plates themselves to make them real. Collectors today know that untouched dummy scoops are technically more valuable because they show the car in its authentic, flawed factory form. Spotter's tip: original block-off plates will have factory-correct welds and fiberglass resin patterns. Cutouts are usually too clean, signaling later modification. It's a classic example of Shelby prioritizing marketing over mechanics. And it wouldn't be the last time. Number 12 dives into how even the badges on the GT500 told a slightly misleading story. The GT500 name wasn't accurate. Here's a truth that'll rattle Shelby purists. The name GT500 didn't actually mean anything. It wasn't tied to horsepower. It wasn't tied to displacement. It wasn't tied to performance benchmarks. Carroll Shelby simply thought 500 sounded more impressive than 350. Back in 1965, the GT350 name had puzzled buyers. What did 350 stand for? Theories flew: horsepower, cubic inches, racing classes. In reality, it was just a number Shelby liked. 2 years later, when the bigger 428 engine came in, Shelby doubled down. GT500 sounded tougher, larger, more commanding. It was a psychological trick, not an engineering label. And it worked. Customers assumed the GT500 was a step above the GT350 in every measurable way, which, to be fair, it often was thanks to displacement. But the badge itself? Pure marketing theater. Collectors today laugh at the myth, but value-wise, the GT500 always commands more than its GT350 sibling. Spotter's tip: authentic 1967 GT500 badges have a unique brushed aluminum finish and were mounted differently than later reproductions. A crookedly mounted badge can actually be a good sign. It shows Shelby's hand-built quirks rather than a modern restorer's perfection. And if you think a meaningless name is odd, number 11 takes it further, because under the skin, some GT500s had engines that weren't even meant for Mustangs at all. Borrowed engines from police interceptors. When you think Shelby engine, you picture exotic racing parts, hand-tuned carburetors, and factory magic. But here's the kicker. The heart of the 1967 GT500 came straight from Ford's Police Interceptor lineup. The engine was a 428 cubic inch big block, originally designed for full-size Fords and Mercurys used in highway patrol fleets. It wasn't technically a racing engine. It was built for reliability and torque. But Shelby saw potential. By pairing it with dual Holley 4-barrel carburetors and an aluminum intake, he turned a police cruiser motor into a street terror. Why use a police engine? Availability. Ford couldn't spare enough 427 racing engines for Shelby's production needs, so they compromised. The 428 was cheaper, easier to source, and still produced monster power. Owners in 1967 were none the wiser. They just knew their GT500s could outgun nearly anything at a stoplight. Collectors today still debate whether the 428 was a real Shelby engine or a parts bin fix. But the truth is clear. It gave the GT500 its personality. Want a spotter's tip? Genuine engines have PI, police interceptor, stampings on the block, often overlooked during restorations. Find one, and you've got proof of Shelby's clever shortcut. And if you thought a police engine in a Shelby was strange, wait until number 10, where racing rules forced Shelby to pull off one of the weirdest workarounds in muscle car history. Racing ban workarounds. Here's the kicker. Despite its racing DNA, the 1967 GT500 wasn't allowed to compete under Ford's corporate policy. In 1966, Ford had pulled out of direct racing sponsorships in North America, bowing to insurance pressure, safety concerns, and public criticism of the horsepower wars. That meant Shelby couldn't officially promote the GT500 as a track car. But Shelby was never one to follow the rules. Instead, he encouraged buyers and privateer racers to skirt the ban. Through back channels, Shelby American made sure performance parts were unofficially available. Headers, cams, and intake upgrades that transformed the GT500 into a track-ready machine. Dealers sometimes installed them before delivery, skirting Ford's no racing edict. The result? GT500s quietly showed up at drag strips and road courses across America, often dominating local events. Period magazines hinted at this underground racing scene, but never outright admitted it. Collectors today still find dealer paperwork listing special performance prep, which is a subtle code for racing gear. Spotter's tip: look for cars with early service records showing unusual camshaft swaps or suspension mods, proof that Shelby kept the spirit alive, even if Ford tried to play it safe. And if you thought corporate bans were weird, number 9 shows how Shelby's design team broke rules in another way, with rear windows that baffled buyers. Quarter windows versus louvers. When the 67 GT500 rolled into showrooms, customers were puzzled. The familiar Mustang fastback quarter windows were gone, replaced by blocky fiberglass scoops. They looked aggressive, but here's the twist. They didn't actually vent air. They were cosmetic covers hiding blanked-out windows. Shelby's team had wanted a racier profile, and adding simulated brake duct styling was a cheap way to achieve it. Functionally, it did nothing. Worse, it reduced rear visibility, which annoyed practical buyers. Period reviews criticized the design as styling excess over substance. But the story gets stranger. Some very early cars left the factory with Mustang quarter windows intact before the louvers were finalized. These rare window cars are collector gold because they reveal Shelby's mid-year design change. Later, owners sometimes swapped louvers back to glass, creating endless confusion for restorers. Today, spotting an authentic 1967 with original louvers requires careful inspection. Factory units were bonded into fiberglass panels with rough seam work, unlike smooth aftermarket replacements. Collectors prize these quirks because they symbolize Shelby's improvisational approach. So, while louvers looked like race-bred ducts, they were little more than fiberglass decoration. And if fake vents seem questionable, wait until you hear number 8, where Shelby used a special paint color so unusual it bordered on secret code. The lime gold illusion. In 1967, Shelby offered a paint option called lime gold metallic. But here's the kicker. It wasn't exactly lime, and it wasn't exactly gold. Under sunlight, the car shimmered between pale green, gold, and sometimes even silver, depending on the angle. Buyers were divided. Some loved its uniqueness, others thought it looked sickly. Why use such a strange hue? Ford's marketing team wanted a color that stood out on dealer lots, something that screamed, "Not your neighbor's Mustang." The result was lime gold, code Y, a shade unlike anything else in the lineup. Shelby paired it with white or black stripes, which made the tone shift even more dramatic. Collectors today know lime gold cars are among the most polarizing Shelbys. At auctions, some buyers pay premiums for originality, while others walk away, preferring classic red or blue. Spotter's tip: authentic lime gold Shelbys will show a faint metallic sparkle under clear coat, not the brighter greens used in modern resprays. Interestingly, Shelby never repeated this color in later years. By 1968, more conventional choices dominated. That makes 1967 the only year where this chameleon-like paint appeared on a GT500. And if you think unusual paint is strange, number 7 proves Shelby was experimenting with something even rarer: hidden roll bars most buyers didn't even notice. The roll bar surprise. Open the door of a 1967 Shelby GT500 and you'll spot something most other muscle cars didn't have: a factory-installed roll bar. That's right. Shelby fitted a competition-style hoop across the rear seats as standard equipment. Why? Carroll Shelby wanted every GT500 to feel like a race car, even if it was destined for suburban driveways. The roll bar not only stiffened the chassis slightly, it also came with inertia reel shoulder harnesses, a first for a pony car. In an era where seatbelts weren't even mandatory in some states, Shelby was installing gear that looked like it, came straight off Le Mans. Here's the twist: few owners actually used the harnesses. Most let them dangle unused or removed them entirely. Some even cut the roll bars out, complaining that it blocked rear seat comfort. That's why original bars, with factory welds and correct padding, are a huge deal for restorers today. Spotter's tip: authentic 1967 roll bars have mounting plates riveted into the rear floor pan, with a unique Shelby part number. Reproductions miss these details. Cars retaining untouched harnesses can command serious premiums, because it proves they weren't stripped out decades ago. So while most cars were cutting corners on safety, Shelby leaned into it. And yet, number 6 shows how safety regulators nearly killed the GT500 before it even hit the showroom. Headlight controversy. When the GT500 was unveiled, the front end caused immediate controversy. Instead of the Mustang's usual twin headlights, Shelby fitted 2 standard inner beams, plus 2 extra high beams in the grille. It gave the car a menacing, almost European GT look. But here's the kicker: some states declared them illegal. Highway regulations in 1967 varied, and several states banned quad inner lamps for spacing violations. That forced Shelby to scramble. Early production cars had inboard high beams mounted close to the grille center, but complaints and legal warnings forced a redesign. Later, cars moved the lamps outward toward the fenders. This created 2 distinct versions of the 67 GT500, early inboard light cars and later outboard light cars. Collectors obsess over the difference, with inboard models considered more desirable due to rarity. Spotter's tip: check the grille openings. Inboard versions have fiberglass filler panels and narrower bezels, while outboard cars feature wider brackets. Auction premiums can exceed $50,000 for documented early builds. The headlight fiasco is a perfect example of Shelby's constant battle with regulations, always pushing boundaries, sometimes crossing them. And if you thought headlights caused drama, wait until number 5, where even the dashboards hid secrets Shelby fans still argue about today. Dashboard oddities slide into the driver's seat of a 1967 GT500, and you'll notice something curious. The dashboard wasn't standard Mustang fare. Shelby modified the interior with a unique instrument cluster featuring Stewart Warner gauges, tachometer, oil pressure, ammeter, that looked like they belonged in a race car. But here's the kicker. Shelby didn't fully integrate them. Instead, the gauges were mounted in a fiberglass overlay that often fit poorly. Owners complained that the bezels sat crooked, the needles bounced erratically, and some clusters rattled at speed. Shelby's crew in Los Angeles hand-fitted these parts, which meant quality varied car to car. For collectors, those imperfections are now signs of authenticity. Too perfect? It's probably a reproduction. Even weirder, some cars left the factory with Mustang GT instrumentation because Shelby ran short of Stewart Warner units. That means you can find genuine 67 GT500s with ordinary Mustang dashboards, an inconsistency that drives restorers mad. Spotter's tip: original Stewart Warner gauges are marked with small date codes, reproductions lack them. Collectors prize surviving dashboards not because they worked flawlessly, but because they reveal Shelby's improvisational style. Each interior tells its own story, and if gauges that rattle seem odd, number 4 takes it further, where even the car's official paperwork sometimes didn't match the car sitting in front of you. Paperwork mismatches. Here's the part that makes collectors sweat. Many 1967 GT500s left the factory with paperwork that didn't match the actual car. Titles, invoices, and Shelby American records occasionally listed the wrong colors, trim options, or even engine details. Why? Chaos. Shelby's Los Angeles operation was moving fast, cranking out cars under tight deadlines. Paper forms were typed by hand, and clerical errors piled up. A lime gold car might be recorded as dark moss green. A GT500 with 4-speed manual might be listed as automatic. For buyers in 1967, it caused confusion at dealerships. For collectors today, it causes headaches during restorations and sales. The Shelby Registry, an enthusiast-run database, has spent decades sorting truth from error. But here's the kicker. Sometimes the paperwork mistakes make a car more valuable. A documented mismatch becomes a conversation piece. Proof of Shelby's controlled chaos. Spotter's tip: check for original build sheets under carpet or seats. They often reveal details missing from invoices. Cars with both paperwork and build sheet discrepancies can fetch premiums at auction because they embody the wild, hand-built nature of 67 Shelbys. And if sloppy paperwork sounds odd, number 3 shows how some GT500s came out of the factory missing entire parts that were supposed to be standard. Missing parts. Straight from the factory. You'd think paying top dollar for a Shelby in 1967 guaranteed you a complete car. But here's the twist. Some GT500s left the factory missing key components. Stories abound of buyers discovering no roll bar padding, absent harnesses, or even missing carburetor linkages. How could that happen? The answer lies in Shelby American's hurried assembly process. Base Mustangs arrived from Ford's San Jose plant and were shipped to Shelby for modification. Cars were stripped, fitted with fiberglass panels, engines, badges, and interior tweaks. But deadlines loomed, workers cut corners, and sometimes cars shipped out half-finished. Dealers were expected to install whatever had been forgotten. Period owners told tales of driving home only to realize their Shelbys lacked emblems or trim pieces. Some cars even had temporary air cleaners installed because proper dual-carb units weren't ready. Dealers quietly corrected these oversights, but not always. Collectors today obsess over these anomalies. A GT500 missing expected parts, but backed by original paperwork, can be more valuable because it highlights the chaotic build process. Spotter's tip: look for dealer service invoices within weeks of delivery, proof that missing items were retrofitted later. Shelby may have built icons, but perfection wasn't guaranteed. And if you think missing parts is shocking, number 2 reveals how pricing trickery convinced buyers they were getting a bargain when they really weren't. Price games at the dealership. In 1967, a Shelby GT500 wasn't cheap. Base price was around $4,200, nearly double a standard Mustang coupe. But here's the kicker. Dealers often inflated the price even more, adding market adjustments that pushed totals well over $5,000. That was Corvette money at the time. Why? Demand. The GT500 was a halo car, and Shelby built only about 2,048 of them. Dealers knew they had leverage. Some even forced buyers to purchase accessories, chrome packages, mag wheels, or stripe kits, just to secure a car. Others used Shelby GT355s as bait, steering less wealthy customers into the smaller model. Period reports suggest buyers complained but paid anyway, because owning a GT500 meant instant status. It was rare, menacing, and unlike anything else in town. For young professionals and car-crazy kids alike, the premium was worth it. Collectors today know these inflated prices set the stage for Shelby's future as a collectible. The cars were expensive when new, and they're even more expensive now. Spotter's tip: original dealer invoices sometimes list additional dealer markup, a snapshot of Shelby's early role in America's price gouging tradition. And if money games sound rough, wait until you hear number 1. The reveal that almost stopped the GT500 from reaching production at all. It almost never made it. Here's the big reveal. The 1967 Shelby GT500 almost never made it to production. The plan was ambitious. Stuff Ford's 428 Police Interceptor engine into a Mustang, dress it up with Shelby styling, and sell it as a new halo model. But several roadblocks nearly killed the project. First, Ford executives balked. The Mustang had been a sporty compact, appealing to women and young buyers. Dropping a big block into it risked alienating that market. Then came engineering hurdles. The 428 was physically larger and heavier than the Mustang's original small block V8S. Fitting it required re-engineering the engine bay, suspension, and cooling system. Costs ballooned. Finally, insurance companies weighed in. Cars rated over 400 horsepower were red-flagged, and premiums soared. That's why Ford fudged the horsepower numbers down to 355. Without that trick, many buyers couldn't have afforded coverage. Shelby himself pushed hard, lobbying Ford brass and promising sales would justify the gamble. In the end, the GT500 launched, but only after near cancellation. Had the project been scrapped, the Mustang's legacy would have looked very different. The GT500 proved a pony car could grow into a muscle car, paving the way for Boss 429s, Mach 1s, and beyond. Collectors today see each 67 GT500 as a survivor, not just of time, but of corporate second-guessing. And that's the kicker. What almost didn't happen became one of the most iconic Mustangs ever built. So what have we learned? The 1967 Shelby GT500 wasn't just a muscle car. It was a rolling contradiction, part race car, part improvisation, part marketing stunt. Its fiberglass cracked, its scoops didn't work, its taillights came from other Fords, and sometimes it left the factory missing parts altogether. And yet, all those quirks make it legendary. Here's the twist. The GT500's myth has grown precisely because of its imperfections. Collectors don't just chase horsepower, they chase stories, anomalies, and the sense that their car is one of one. That's why these Shelbys now command 6 and 7 figures at auctions. So, which fact blew your mind? Was it the police interceptor engines, the fake scoops, or the near cancellation that almost robbed us of the GT500 entirely? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you loved this dive into Shelby's strangest year, check out our videos on the Corvette L88 and the Dodge Charger Daytona. Until next time, keep your hands on the wheel and your eyes on the legends.